surprised that we know the past 3-4 years, we've had a lot of compliance issues. And we've had some disarray as a result of those compliance issues. This report highlights those compliance issues that we've seen over the past 3-4 years, but it also goes back and looks at some systemic issues that we've had going back 5, 10, 15 years within the special education department, and highlights what they are, but also provides a roadmap for what we can do for success. So I think Greg and I, when we read the report, I was going through, I said, yes, I know we need to do that. Yes, I know we need to do that. I didn't know we didn't have, a report in a piece of paper for section 42, subsection 8 on file, but I now know that. But this is a great report. Nothing is a surprise to myself and Dr. Rosenthal when we read it. I thank the company that did it. It was comprehensive, it was thorough, and it really does highlight everything soup to nuts of what we need to do. It's about 15, 16 recommendations?
Overall, there's buckets of 7 to 8.
Okay.
But with that, they have those sub.
Yeah. So are we going to be able to do all this in a year? Absolutely not.
Boy, you try.
But we will try, yes. But we've already started doing some of the stuff, and as Greg goes through the highlighted recommendations, you're going to see you can't do all of this in 1 year. But we've already started doing some of it, and it's a work in progress. So I don't want to steal any more of your thunder. So we'll start with the slide deck of the Special Education Review.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vera. And as he mentioned, this is a review of the system and the department for multiple years. This is outside just the turnover of 3 to 4 years. This is something that has components that could have been put forth 15 years ago. Co-teaching isn't new. Inclusion practices aren't new. These are things that Department of Ed has done professional development around for decades now, and trying to make sure that we have an appropriate department that is structured, but also an outline of what each member is responsible for, so that if people leave, there is some documentation to come back to, and so that we can be sustaining it. Because it's not that it didn't happen, it's just there's no record of it. So the methodology. So the company came out, they did a review of pertinent written documents. This is a random selection. They gave us a wide range of abilities that they would like to look at. So different disability categories, as well as different service categories, so sub-separate, inclusion, related services, and they reviewed those records. They did a site visit to all schools. I was able to do some tours with them, have them meet some staff informally, have them get sites on our special education settings in each of the schools, and then they did one-to-one interviews, as it mentions, 32 individuals in total. Went across sections of school-based personnel, general and special education staff, administrators, and parents. And I do want to thank everyone who did participate. Their feedback was crucial in this, and it was very helpful. So the positions that were interviewed, the superintendent did a great job. School committee member also was one of the people interviewed. They interviewed myself, the administrative assistants, school adjustment counselors 2, principals 3, special education coordinators, both of them, and some general education, regular education teachers. There was also 7 parents interviewed. There were 7 special education teachers, there was 1 school psychologist, and there were 2 paraprofessionals. So again, this is a wide range of feedback for this. So that was really important for this document because it's a different perspective, and you get the day-to-day base and you get the umbrella, the 30,000-foot umbrella base. So it was really good, and the parents did an excellent job because really we're here to service for the community, and the parent feedback is so important. So there's specific commendations. They want to recognize what the district is doing correctly and want to build off of strength. Like we do with all of things, we want to overcome what is our weaknesses using our strengths. So the openness for interviewees. people weren't trying to hide anything. People want to do what's right and want to be better and want the department to be better. So the openness, no one was hiding anything. So that's really important. Commitment to the coordinator positions. The two coordinators are very committed to helping special education in the department, but really it goes more so into helping individual students. Getting to know programs is one thing in the system, but getting to know the day-to-day operations in individual students, and it's commendable, and they wanted to highlight that. The district's commitment to inclusion. We want to make sure that we are including all students, regardless of ability level, in all aspects of the educational setting, which could be instruction, which could be the classroom, could be the physical setting, it could be what we call the life of the school, clubs, sports, after-school activities, field trips. So there is a commitment to that, and the staff and the parents really want that to be part of each child's day. The involvement of the CPAC. We've been meeting almost twice a month. There's been a little bit of issues with May. May was a busy month. We weren't able to meet, but we've been almost twice a month. And that group has done a great job advising, and not so much saying that we're doing things wrong, but looking how can we improve and doing it together. And that's the important part, and that's the relationship we want to build and continue to develop. Access to IEPs for teaching assistants. So we want to make sure people have access to students' information when they're working with them, making sure we're keeping confidential, absolutely. But if you are working with a child, you should have access and be aware of what that child requires, services, accommodations, so all staff have that access. And commitment to program development, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the future slides, but we're really highlighting developing a skill-based programmatic changes to the department, and the feedback that we've had from staff, feedback from parents, in this report over the course of the year, that's something that we've really focused on and highlighted. So we'll definitely talk about that. So these are factors that might affect special education program and services, and this isn't specific to Douglas. This is something that's across the country, across the state, and all districts. So although it is here in Douglas as well, it's just something I want to make mention that it is factors that everyone kind of faces. The census and needs of the students, being able to identify appropriate needs and what is the census behind that, and how do we ensure that students' abilities are being addressed, and making sure that if there is any kind of concerns that we highlight that first. Increase in the severity of needs across the state, across the country. We're seeing a larger amount of severity in the needs. It's more commonplace now. We are seeing more services being required to support students for one factor or another. Fiscal implications. So when you provide additional services, there are fiscal implications, and what we have to do as a department, make sure that we are effectively and efficiently providing services for students, and you'll see that, and we want to make sure that the right services are occurring, and we want to make sure that the students are able to access education through those services and being fiscally responsible for that. And so that's a highlight that we have to ensure. The advocacy and legal issues, we know that there has been continuous development. The new IEP is one of those, but there is continuous development over legal issues and advocacy groups. Dyslexia, one of the big ones that has come out. It's still a specific learning disability, but there's more literature and training around dyslexia. And that's just two of the smaller, or the bigger issues. There are other legal issues that keep facing districts, and we have to do legal training every year. We, as a group, as a department, we attend legal training to make sure we're up to date with everything. technology and assistive technology. This is the gateway for a lot of our students to truly express their knowledge and their skills. And this is ever developing. Long ago, we were still talking about the Dragon speech to text and how outdated that is. I was in a meeting today when we were talking about, Google text to speech and how much better that is than the old day. I still remember the Alpha Smarts, which is really old school, where you have one line and you're typing at a time, and now we have Google Chromebooks for everyone. So it's just ever evolving, and really, the benefit of that is students are really able to express and unlock their knowledge, and that's something that we have to keep in mind. And the educational experience, as I mentioned, we're here not just to be providing instruction in the classroom. We talk about developmental appropriateness, socially, emotionally, being able to develop some of those career readiness skills, because we are responsible for college and or career and or college readiness. So having those educational experiences to provide that opportunity, and that's something that faces all programs and services. So on to the findings. Again, the findings are going to be big buckets. The more detailed is in that report, the 50-page report. So there's more detail to that. They also weren't one-off. They made sure there was a pattern and that multiple pieces of evidence was found to have that finding. So this isn't just a one-off component. So the pre-referral process, and we talked a little bit about the MTSS and...
Greg, can I just interrupt for one quick second, just for sake of transparency? It wasn't you that put this PowerPoint together?
Oh, yes, no.
Yep.
I apologize.
Yep.
This was provided by the company. They did kind of a summary for that, so, yeah. Sorry about that. The pre-referral process, so it's a response to intervention effort. So making sure that we have a set policy and procedure of how we provide that across the district. We know that when a parent refers a student for special education testing, the district has a responsibility to do that. With the response to intervention, this is where a staff member might say a student is having difficulty in a certain area. We want to make sure we exhaust everything in general education prior to saying that a child is disabled. So ensuring that process is streamlined and is concrete throughout the district was one of the findings, and just some things that we can work on. So entrance and exit criteria, that is for special education services, whether it's programs, sub-separate programs. It could also be related services, our speech language pathologists, OT, PT, who qualifies for OG instruction, or who would be better off having inclusion supports. So having that would be really important. That way, parents understand when they're going into a meeting what that entrance and exit criteria is. Staff understand it, and it's kind of a rubric as to a data-driven decision, which we always want to be in our meetings. A lack of understanding of the DCAP. I want to take a moment with this one, because it wasn't as much that the feedback was they don't know what a district curriculum accommodation plan is. It was a little bit more around where to locate it, how to make sure response to intervention, or MTSS, is incorporated in that. Parents being aware of it, because when we sit at a meeting and we talk about specialized accommodations, we first have to look what was tried through the curriculum accommodation plan and then specialize off of that. Preferential seating is part of the DCAP. We specialize in saying that due to potential anxiety risk, a student might need to be sitting near a doorway. That's different than what's in the DCAP. So that's things that we want to develop. Lack of social skills curriculum. We talk about an SEL in component with the morning meeting, and we're developing that as the principals all have been talking about, and we'll continue to talk about after I'm off in the other two buildings. But really what we're looking at is what is a specialized social skills curriculum. We have looked into, and we're going to be rolling out next year, zones of regulation for coping and self-regulation skills, social thinking for our social pragmatics, our interpersonal skills. And Beth had a really good recommendation that I'm looking into last night, because I also presented this to the CPAC last night prior to this. So I'm going to be looking into that curriculum as well.
We already own social thinking and all of that, so there's no cost. We already have all
Yeah.
of that stuff. We just need to
Train.
ding and training.
Yes, absolutely. And both of those I have used in other districts with success. The older kids need a little modified version of that, and companies actually have started to look to address that with our teenagers, so, and our, 18-year-olds. Inconsistent communication between administration and staff as well as parents. We know that we are ever developing our communication practices. One thing that we're looking at is what is the flow of information from staff to staff to parents, so on and so forth. Having a special education liaison do day-to-day operations, day-to-day information, where if there needs to be further looking into something, maybe the building principal or the special education coordinators or myself. So having that flow.
Greg, can you talk about what you're planning on having the liaisons send out at the beginning of the year?
Absolutely. Part of what we're looking to do at the beginning of the year is a welcome communication, whether it's an email or in person, whatever it might be. It's multiple facets to it. One is, what is your preferred method of communication? Do you want a phone call, email? Do you not check emails? Do you just want a phone call? Would you rather just see the email in your own time? For what you would like for updates for your child. Are we looking at, once a quarter, if anything, or if anything is a concern, or are you looking at, once a week type of things? Being mindful of our staff's time. And also get to know the student, not just what's on paper, because this child is going to be new to you at the beginning of the year potentially. So what is that student's interest? What are their goals? What do they like to do at home? Get to know the student a little bit, build that relationship as best as possible at the start. So we're going to ask liaisons to send out that communication at the beginning of the year, and really hopefully, can address some of that communication. If you need to ask questions about this, please feel free to reach out to me. If there's something that involves the lunch menu, maybe you need to go to the building principal on that, or the secretary or something like that.
On that point, can you remind me, do you cover 504s as well, or just IEPs?
So the Student Service Department oversees 504 compliance as well. It is also done at the building base, so we have 504 coordinators at each building, someone who will facilitate the meetings. One part that we're going to implement next year, I have a manual that I've used in the past that I'm going to train the coordinators on to ensure that they, very similar to an IEP, are up to date with all the regulations and requirements of a 504.
I guess my question is, if your child is on a 504 versus an IEP, will you also get that? Like, I think that communication plan would be really helpful, even for kids on a 504, of the parents. If this is not being followed, who do I go to?
It's a good idea. We can definitely do that. And one thing I also want to highlight, these are all our students, so part of this is also, we're going to make sure there's a point of contact for general education staff members when appropriate as well. So very similar to a 504 potentially, that 504 coordinator might be able to answer some questions about the 504, but the day-to-day component of that
Right.
might need to be the general ed teacher. So we can definitely do that.
Yeah. And it made me think of the lunchroom, right? Like,
Yeah.
parents not going to know who to go to.
Exactly.
So,
Absolutely. So professional development. So this is going to be a long-standing component of this. This is going to take multiple years. There's a bunch of areas that we're going to have to address in professional development, and it can't be one of those one and dones. This is going to be ongoing, and continued conversations. It doesn't have to just be during the PD days. We could take some staff time, common planning time, department meetings, after-school meetings, some of the building meetings. We can be doing this throughout the year, and that's going to be our goals as a department next year, is the professional development, and how we are going to be rolling out a lot of the adjustments that we're looking to do as a department. So assuring programs have the proper student population. So we want to make sure, as we talked about, that we are highlighting student abilities and what skill deficits they might have, and developing that using specialized design instruction through a program, a sub-separate program that will build those skills. So identifying the setting and what skill is going to be developed in that setting, and making sure the appropriate student is going to that setting, so that we don't have a mix of cohorts where the instruction is working on skills that are too far apart from each other, and then scheduling appropriately. Current job descriptions. We want to make sure that all staff members are understanding of their job duties and their responsibilities. Part of that is the policy and procedure manual that we have in draft and will finalize this summer, to show what is, whether it's compliance standards and who's responsible for what, or day-to-day instruction, who should be providing what and how to do that. So that's going to be in our policy and procedure manual, which we will be rolling out this summer. Assuring proper identification of student disabilities. Again, we talked about that. We want to make sure we identify them appropriately so we can service them appropriately.
And just going back to the current job descriptions, I remember from our exit interview, obviously teachers know what they're supposed to be doing inside the classrooms. One of the things that came out was that, you hate to talk about the special ed, gen ed divide, but was having everyone have a clear understanding of what inclusion is and what inclusion isn't. What is a B grid service? What is a C grid service? When do those happen? So this was as much for special education staff as it was for all staff, to have a clear understanding of what services we provide to students and have everyone understand what they mean. So I just want it out there that people don't know what they're supposed to be doing in their roles.
The recommendations were divided into 6 sections. So the pre-referral, having instructional support teams, as the principals were talking about, in response to intervention, that RTI. Program development, so ongoing identification for what the programs are, and inclusion and co-teaching strategies, which we're going to get into as we look forward to professional development next year. We'll talk about in a minute. Again, the professional development, training for all staff on special education, and I like that it's all staff. Again, as Dr. Vera said, that we are going to be rolling out a professional development plan to incorporate everyone involved in the district, to make sure that everyone's aware of what the roles are and what programs are and responsibilities. Training for paraprofessionals, and that's something that we're already addressing currently. Parent awareness and support. Training needs, the CPAC and I had talked about that last night. What could we do to support our parents and develop different trainings next year? We're definitely going to revamp, not revamp, but robust website. We need a special education page that's very robust. And some of the plans that we have in place, I'm going to be working to get some video clips onto our website so people can access it, and whether it's me going over the new IEP or other things that we had talked about. So administrative data collection and scheduling oversight. So I do have to thank all the principals. They've been very collaborative. We've done a very in-depth look at the schedules this year to make sure that we are providing the best services next year. So it's been great. Consistent and timely oversight of staff schedules. Again, that goes with the work with the principals. Timely communication between all staff and parents, again, that goes back to sort of that beginning of the year form. Guidelines for staff on how communication should be occurring to ensure messages to parents are clear, specific, and relevant. Entrance and exit criteria for all programs, for all services, for all to see and understand. Again, that's something that we want to make sure parents are aware of, staff are aware of, if they are making recommendations, that they have a full understanding of what would be entrance criteria for that, and then how do we know when a student is ready to be least restrictive and exit that. So that's important. And then the procedure manual, which we will finalize this summer. Programming and staffing oversight, annual review of special education program populations. That's something that the department will do at administrative level, and clarification of administrative responsibilities. So we're going to be talking about that over the summer and who's going to be responsible for what.
All right.
Questions?
Oh, I have none. So, I do. Well, more or less comments. So I'm really grateful that, for people that don't know, that you wanted to make sure you kept your commitment to the CPAC, that you were going to let them see this before it coming here. So I appreciate that. I know your day was long yesterday, and I know the families appreciated that. I think one of the things that I've heard loud and clear, and I think we've all heard loud and clear, this was a great report. This report is only money well spent if we make changes. And one of the things, that I've heard, continue to hear loud and clear, and I'm still hearing loud and clear this year, is what the love of the teachers and the staff are for the kids, but what the concerns are that they still feel they don't have that administrative support, and they don't have that support on our end. And I know, like, our steps, right? You have the policy and procedure manual, and we have these plans in place. I'm concerned, and I think a lot of the families that I've talked to, the state of Massachusetts is implementing a new IEP plan. That means all the staff have to be trained on that. We're going to roll out a new policies and procedures thing. All the staff have to be trained on that. You have to complete it. Your staff have to complete it. It's June, and we want to have this ready to go for September. And we're introducing Panorama more and Power School. And I'm just really, we need to look at how we're going to make sure that this happens. So come September 1st, or whatever day we start school,
26th.
this needs to be in place, and this needs to be ready. And I'm concerned that not because you're not working hard, and not because your team isn't working hard, but how we're going to make sure this all happens. This is a lot of work. And to do it right, and to do it well, and to do it better than we have been, I'm just worried how we're going to make that happen.
Greg, can you talk a little, so the Power School rollout, we've already started. John Calabrese sent an email out to staff to start the training. They have access to that. I think about 2 months ago. I sent out a reminder to staff to look at Power School. We have Power School training set up for the summer, and we're allocating 3 to 5 hours of Power School training before the start of the school year. We're going to have our tech department do, for the first 2 weeks of school, I think we're setting up like a 9 o'clock, a 12 o'clock, and a 3 o'clock office hours. And the next 2 weeks after that, just doing it twice a week. So we'll have the support for Power School out there. It's pretty intuitive. What I tell people is we hire 7 or 8 new teachers every year. We give them a 30-minute training on IPASS, and then they run with it. Obviously, they have people they can go to for help and support, but Power School's pretty intuitive. I know I've spoken to Greg a lot about the IEP rollout process and the policy manual that we've been hearing. Do you want to talk a little bit about the PD that you've already done?
Yes.
Around both of those? And by no means, we know we still have a lot of work to do, but.
And the PD that because these teachers and these staff want quality PD.
Correct.
And we need to have that done too.
Yeah.
So over the course of the year, we've done a lot of feedback from the staff in our PD. Earlier At the very beginning, it was a lot just trying to get to know the district. In our January PD, we did a full deep dive into the IEP. It was the Department of Ed's provided us with the training and provided us with the presentation. We did the deep dive into that. We know that it's only abstract right now until we actually get the Power School up and running, and they can get into an IEP and see what it looks like. They have just a template copy or an exemplar copy. EastBed, which is our current model, didn't have the new IEP, and they weren't going to adopt it in time for us to be training staff on it. So that's one of the reasons why we are moving to the Power School component of special education. That was going to be the student information system regardless. It's just we are also making sure that the special education part is in that for us as well. We could have stayed with EastBed, but they weren't going to adapt the new IEP in time for us. So that's part of this. And we will have ongoing trainings. Part of this professional development plan, especially around the new IEP, I'm trying to look at how we're going to support staff, parents on that, and what's the best way to communicate this. That's sort of where the idea of the snippets of each section, maybe a 5 to 7 minute presentation of each section, and what is required in that section, almost like a TED Talk. We know that, people are busy and we don't have a lot of time to sit down and have an hour-long presentation. But if you can grab 5 minutes here, 7 minutes here to take a look at sections, that could inform the population or the community or the staff. We also can refer people back. So if people are trying to write their IEPs, the staff members, refer back to those sections. Hey, if you have a question, look at this first. Let's see if that answers any of your questions. If not, then you can come to, the appropriate people. So that, for professional development around that. But to your point, Beth, also that there is a lot that we want to roll out next year, and there is going to be, and part of the next presentation is also how we're going to do that. I always find it's a lot easier to make changes or adjustments or introduce something new in a small, intense, very focused trainings with people who are very invested in it, and then expand from there. And that's something we'll definitely talk about.
Well, I will stay tuned because I hope that comes to fruition. But like I said, I think, and it's not that I don't appreciate what everybody's doing, but I think we represent parents, right? We represent what families are coming to us and saying, and they've been saying loud and clear, we've heard the same thing. We've heard the same thing, and I don't want us to get to a point where we're back in September and we go, well, we tried, because I know we're trying. And if there's additional things we need to do to support, like, we need to have those conversations now, not in August, now.
Yes.
Next one. There's another PowerPoint.
I'm sorry?
Do you have the other PowerPoint ready to go?
I only had one.
Okay, so we will read
I'm
off.
sorry.
It's all right.
Let me grab my computer real quick.
You want to use my packet?
You have it? I only had one. Well, let me just...
So the next presentation, I asked Greg to do a year in review of what we've done and also a look ahead into a little bit of next year. And you'll see a lot of the work that he's done kind of ties into the slide deck that you just saw for the special education review. And it also, some of the things we're looking for next year also address some of the things. I think before Greg presented, I said, there's a lot, we know we can't do it all in 1 year, and you even said, we have two major things with the IEP rollout and the policy procedure manual. We have, what was it, 9, 10 big buckets there?
Yeah.
This is gonna take a while to do it right. To do entrance and exit criteria, and to do it thoughtful and correct takes time. to do good program descriptions takes time. To put together quality PD that we can afford
Right.
takes time. So again, these recommendations, if you look at, these are things that haven't unfortunately been in place, or been in place in different variations over the past 10, 15 years. We can't fix it all in 1 year. It's going to take some time to do.
Well, and I know you've brought them to us in September and October, and we've been looking at them too, so it's just like getting the process going.
Yeah, I think, I just want to mention that from the community standpoint, I have heard very similar things to what Beth has said, and as she mentioned, us up here representing what the community members have to say. I know of 2 families leaving the district because their kids are making no progress with their IEPs, and that's so disheartening as a school committee member for me to hear, so you guys are doing so much, and I really, really appreciate it. I think the point is, like, we really want to see results.
Right, and if we need to make decisions to have those results happen, then that's why we're here. Like, we're all here to do that. But I don't want anybody to be afraid to, like, say, like, oh, well, let's pivot. I hate that word.
I know.
But, like, if we need to, like, we need to have a conversation, we need to support you and your staff to do the work that we want you and your staff to do.
Scott's going to put it up for us.
Yeah, all I got was one, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Send it.
Yeah, I did. Just did.
Like buying concert tickets, you just keep hitting the flash.
No, that's not good.
And and I do want to kind of just make a comment. I think the staff is also in a similar boat. They want to make the right changes, and doing so with a mindset that we want to make sure it's planned accordingly, because we also know, as if we're flying a plane and building it at the same time, it falls apart. So we want to make sure that, you know, what we're doing is definitely successful and beneficial to all.
Exactly, and it's not a criticism by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just if we need to do better so that you can do better, we need to do better so you can do better.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, it's right.
So again, we're going with our data-driven decisions. So this was a year kind of looking at the department and the needs of the department. You know, we want to make sure we touch base with the stakeholders, the CPAC, getting the parent perspective and feedback and advisories. We've met with the staff. So again, with CPAC, we were averaging close to 2 meetings a month. Staff, I was holding monthly department meetings and weekly meetings with principals and the superintendent. Just trying to ensure everyone is aware of what's going on. So tiered focus monitoring and department reviews. So the special education department had the annual report card, which I presented a couple months ago. So that was one data point. There's the Department of Ed tiered focus monitoring. That was the deep dive and audit into the department and the record review. We also had the Seaside third-party review of the department. Although a lot that we talk about is about special education, the department also has other components, 504s, but also English language learners. So the Department of Ed also did a tiered focus monitoring for our EL practices as well. Policy and procedure manual, special education, compliance to state and federal timelines, compliance to appropriate paperwork when needed. English language learners, new requirements as of September 2024. We need to have a policy and procedure manual, and the MTSS process guidelines to support students, and looking at having structure in place and to help train staff on those things. So program development. So over the course of the year, we had a lot of feedback, especially being able to look at programs and the skill development. So this is sort of what the outcome was. So our FLEX program is a special education setting for coping and self-regulation skill development, developing those skills so that they could address things like anxiety or depression or frustrations that impact education. That program also is looking to continue at grade level content. It's not that we're modifying the curriculum, it's we're reinforcing the curriculum with self-regulation and coping skills. Our STARS program, special education setting for daily living skills, pre-vocational skills, and functional academics. So functional academics, that when we say it that way, a lot of it goes into what our MCAS alts are for, which due to the student's profile, they might not be able to access the typical MCAS, and there's an alternative that is provided. So there's a setting that provides that. And then we have a small group. So this is a setting that modifies instruction and curriculum to meet academic deficits. Not all of our students can access education in the larger inclusion or co-taught setting, and they require that modified of instruction that is to a level that is outside of that co-taught classroom. So those three are some of the program developments. That being said, students are in inclusion to their level of ability. So they're not in the sub-separate programs all day long. We want to make sure they have an opportunity to generalize skills. Also, some students might access one or two of the programs. They don't have to necessarily say, well, all skills are going to be developed here. We might have students that have a small group, modified instruction for academics, but also might need vocational skills. So they might be accessing those skills in two different settings. And that's why I look at settings that are skill development and not based upon a disability, because our disabilities can be impacting different areas.
Greg, can you just about the, I know you mentioned this with the CPAC last night. I think it's important for people that might be watching tonight to hear too, is there's a difference between co-teaching and inclusion. And a child might be in a co-taught classroom, so there might be 3 adults in that classroom, but one is servicing one student, and the other 2 are co-teaching their classroom.
Yep. And so for that, a student might have a one-to-one and require that that direct instruction with someone very close by to them. But they're still accessing what's being provided by the special education teacher and the general education teacher. So it is a well-rounded group that is providing that and ensuring that student has access to that. And for, there's a difference between a co-taught classroom where there's 2 licensed teachers, a general ed and a special ed teacher, or an inclusion classroom where you have a potential general education teacher with a paraprofessional or ABA potentially, who is there to support that student, but they're still accessing the general ed content.
Thank you, because I know there's been some questions over, the last few years about there was, a lot of adults in the room, and that's why when we look at planning where those kids are going to get their inclusion opportunities, we want to be mindful about it, but also sometimes there might be 3 adults in the classroom, but they're all serving their own separate roles, but collaborative roles.
Absolutely. Intensive training for special education co-teaching strategies. So the model that we are looking to roll out is a Champions of Co-Teaching. It's delivered to a small group of invested general education and special education teachers. If we are going to do true co-teaching, there has to be co-planning, there has to be co-facilitation of a classroom. There are 7 different types of strategies that can be used by these 2 teachers. And we want to make sure that we are giving them intensive, directed professional development around that. And also, it's not just the instructional practices, it's the languages that the teachers use. This is our classroom. We are expecting you to do this. So it's as simple as where desks are. Is there a general ed teacher's desk? Well, where's the special ed teacher's desk? How do we make it so that when you walk in, you don't know which one is the special ed teacher and which one's the general ed teacher? Other than if you already recognize them. So I like to call it islands of influence. Start very small. Intensive training with invested, and highlight that, and really try to celebrate the successes. Because that's the way where we expand into other people saying, well, if that's working for you, how do we do that in our classroom? And using that as a model for others to potentially see or to get excited about as well. And being able to continue to expand and include additional teachers over the course of several years. And that's why co-teaching does take time, because we want to make sure that there is peers within the teaching departments that can help support others too, that it wouldn't necessarily just be falling on me to do the professional development, but I can say, hey, why don't you go take a look at this lesson, sort of thing. So the new IP, so we're going to continue training of the new document. Again, my goal is to have video recordings of the training so we can refer, again, 5 to 7 minute snippets, and then go into that. Parent support, CPAC training, and continuous review. So before the beginning of the year, I had mentioned to CPAC, I think that would be really good if we had another review of the new IEP. We did that a couple months ago, and to do it again. So CPAC, again, advisory to the district. It says instrumental. It's to support our budget process, programming, and it provides family insight. It also gives us future consideration for continued training and other CPAC events. Community involvement, expanding opportunities within the community, exploring of off-campus work sites. That's something that started this year, and we're really excited about next year. We have a few that we're looking to go to. Expansion of daily living skill opportunity, getting to be familiar with your community and what resources and what you have opportunities for within the town of Douglas. Schedules and staffing, collaboration with principals. Again, we want to continue that. We have already worked to create schedules to support inclusion, identify opportunities for all students for access, effective and efficient use of our staff. We also incorporated a one-to-one rubric because we want to do data-driven decisions. So if a student requires that intensive need of that external support, we want to make sure that there is data to drive that decision.
Do you have that rubric up and going now?
They've been, staff have been trained on it. It has been used in meetings. Has it been with fidelity? I can't say that with 100% certainty, and it's an ongoing, but it has been used at meetings I've been at when a new one-to-one has been requested.
It would be helpful if that got brought up to the CPAC and maybe gotten on the website somewhere.
Yeah. So new staff. So this year we have the high school post-grad position, severe special needs position that's posted. We also have a .5 clerical position, and this has been through, the data that we've gone through the course of this year, and it's been, really good to see that we can add that support in.
These two positions have already been
Yeah.
Posted, and not
just
filled.
posted but not filled.
Not
Okay,
filled,
yeah.
correct.
Like, how many people come to CPAC?
We had, what, 7?
We had 7 last night. Sometimes we can have up to 18. This one, we literally, because we had to move it around due to district meetings. No, so it was literally kind of a little bit of a last minute, and we still got the parents together, and there is, you know, a group, some parents that talk and do different things, but the biggest way that it grows is the coordinators at the IEP meeting saying, this is a resource for you, this is a family, like, that you can join, they have our brochures. I don't know how often obviously, they're not coming to me at my IEP meeting, so I don't know how often.
Yeah, I think the more we can encourage families to be a part of that, the better, because I have heard people say, well, because I've said, well, come to the school committee meeting, and like, there's public comment, and they're like, I don't want my kid to be targeted, I don't want to publicly have them called out, but I think if maybe we point them to that resource so that they feel a little bit more part of the community. And
I'll be completely honest, a lot of times we have people with their cameras off.
Yeah.
And different names, until Greg will, and this isn't just Greg, all special ed administrators, you know, do their thing, do their presentation, and then we tell them, thank you, have a great night, and we stay on. And that's when a lot of the times, I'm like, oh, that was you. But because there's still distrust, right? I don't think any of us sitting here don't realize we've come a long way. So then all of a sudden the camera, I'm like, what? Wait, where did you get that name? But, you know, then they come and they start talking. So
We do send out a one call too
We
with
do.
the meeting link to all families. It doesn't just go to, so anyone
Right.
who is interested is welcome to come.
yeah, especially people that don't know if their kids maybe need an IEP. Those are the people like to come and talk.
I do want to say just a thanks. This has been a great year. The school committee has been very supportive. Dr. Vera, Ms. Keegan has been very supportive, all the building principals. This is probably one of the best admin team I've worked with. And so this has been a job that has been a lot easier because of all this support. I just want to thank everyone basically in this room because it's been a really supportive and excellent year with that.
Thank you, Greg.
thank you for everything you've been doing. Very appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. Next. We'll go back to our regularly scheduled programming. Mr. Haynes.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Wonderful.
May I just start? I just want to make a comment if I could. I wanted to thank our PTO. Today was the walkathon, and for the elementary school and the primary school, they raised $20,000 today, over $20,000 with this walkathon, and the parents were there, the teachers had the kids make signs, there were a bunch of parents there that were watching, and the volunteers, it was hot today, and they were out all day in the heat, and they raised a lot of money for our school, so I just wanted to thank them. It was really impressive.
That's wonderful.
That's amazing.
First one I've ever seen, and I was very impressed. So.
Big thanks to our PTO.
Thanks for our PTO.
So I think I'll just start by going over the handbook changes, if that's okay. There aren't too many significant changes. If you run through this, you'll see just some sort of nuts and bolts things in terms of names on the cover, and then just some, if you get down to the bottom on the first page, on page 8, rather, first page of changes, we point out in page 8, just a slight change in the language where we just talk about we really highlight the importance of the relationship with parents and families. We really want to make that really clear, and it's a little bit of a theme in here. We try to kind of weave it in a little bit, because if you go to the next part, you'll see when parents have a concern on page 9, we really reiterate that, you know, we want the parents to feel, we want to be work very closely together. It's something that I talk to parents a lot about, how it's important that we work together and the kids know that we're working together. So we really re-emphasize that point and talk about, you know, by working together to support their children. And then if you move down to the middle of that paragraph, we really make a plea to the families, to not air concerns over social media, but to rather do so with us first, come to us first. If there's a concern, first go to the teacher, and then if there are follow-up concerns, then you can come to us as administrators, but please do come to us with issues or concerns as opposed to sort of airing things out on social media, which, there can be breaches in confidentiality, and it's just not a safe space for things to be resolved, and we just really want to reiterate that point, just so that's not the first reaction. So we made the decision to include that in there. If you go down to page 9, we talk about formation of the school council, which we'd like to develop a school council, like for next year, a new school council. Looking forward to that, so we just view this as an opportunity to let families know what that process looks like, what the role is, and of course, the school committee is, you're mentioned there as well. So, but that's not a change, that's in there from the prior version of this document. And then if you move over to the next page, we talk about how on page 15, we mentioned that we're adding STEM, which we're excited for. If you go down to page 7, if you look down below that, we acknowledge on page 17 how you'll see there's a change. It goes from 2 to 4 for the grades that were done before, and then grade 5, where next year it's all going to be in Power School. And so we're just mentioning that it's all going to be on the same platform. So that's mentioned there. And then just a slight tweak in the language with regards to student behavior, and those are really the biggest changes in the handbook.
I was just curious about the parent visitation that was removed.
Okay.
Why was that decision made?
Parent visitation, well, there was an event that used to take place at the school that involved parent visitation. Parents are always welcome to come to the school or whatnot, but it involved having lunch, and it was, that had happened in the past, and it's, I guess it hadn't been taking place much prior. There was one request to do that this year, and it just doesn't seem like it's continued on. So we just removed that because it wasn't really a factor. That's why. I mean, that's really the only reason. It's something that I think it was something that had happened in the past, but just was no longer taking place.
Okay.
But by no means do we want to give people the impression that they can't come to that. We want it to be a welcoming place. So.
Yeah, I think because it's only this one
Yeah,
line
yeah.
here that's listed, it just looks like,
Yeah.
it literally says parent visitations removed.
Yeah. That's one word.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Any other questions? All right, well, I would be looking for a motion.
I'll make that motion to approve the elementary school's parent-student handbook for school year 24-25.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll move on to the school improvement plan. And so I realize that a school improvement plan is really, it's a map to a successful year for a school. And one thing I do really want to mention is that I think, as you know, I came in about a third of the way through. It was kind of like I just sort of fell into the ocean and just sort of started swimming, right? And trying to find land, right? And so one thing that I do want to mention is that I didn't start and then go to the school improvement plan and see the things that have been identified by prior administrators about what the needs of the school were. There were just sort of other things that I really kind of needed to do, right? Sort of in triage mode. And really kind of most of the time I spent initially was kind of learning about the school, the staff, the students, the families, the culture, the safety, right? Learning how it all works, right? And getting familiar with that. And then once I sort of kind of felt comfortable and stable there and sort of understood how it all worked, it was then a question of really kind of assessing the situation at the school, right? What's working? What are the opportunities for improvement? And then sort of kind of prioritizing what needed to be addressed. And I will just tell you quite honestly that some of those things are on the school improvement plan, but not all of them. So not everything that I decided to kind of target or work towards or work on was listed here in the plan, right? So there are things that are in the school improvement plan that I felt were really important that I addressed, but some of the things that were in here, they were sort of more kind of not as much of a priority. So, and in the amount of time, I didn't address everything, but if we could kind of walk through what has been addressed and how it's been addressed, and I'm happy to answer any questions, of course. But if you go to the first page, the student learning goal, the academic excellence, if you go down midway, you see use data to drive the instructional practices, and that was really one thing that I felt I wanted to see more of in the school. That we had the access to the STAR, the data. It's very useful data. I realize it's just one. It's a snapshot of things, but it is helpful, and wanted to kind of have more regularity in terms of us utilizing that data. We spend time, assessing the kids, having them do the tests, and then taking the time to look through the data and identify where the needs are, and then turn that into a plan, and then address the plan in terms of supporting the needs of the kids based on the results of the data. So what I really kind of focused on was going to CPT meetings and starting to have those play a larger role in the common planning times in particular. And then also I would meet individually with teachers and would go over, the data use as well. So that's one thing that's here on the school improvement plan that I definitely had a focus on. And then as far as integrating key practices in the classroom observations, I went through the RBT. They're analyzing teachers for student results, that model of assessing teachers and providing feedback and conducting observations and walkthroughs and whatnot. So that was something that I utilize when I'm doing observations and giving teachers feedback, and I think that that's something that's very important and I value a lot, and that was something that I incorporated into my practice when it comes to working with teachers. So that was something that was here in the school improvement plan that it wasn't part of, other than the observation part, I added it into the end of the year update because it was something that I felt I personally brought to that part of the job and the school. So that's the academic excellence part. If you continue to the next part there, if you go down to the bottom there's the 100% of all students in grades 2 to 5 will score at or above grade level in the STAR and the math and the assessments there. And basically, if we continue on, if you go to the next page, and you go down to the bottom, you'll see that this school, we did not attain those goals. What I will say is that I do feel like something that we did achieve as a school is incorporating more culture around data usage and the ISSPs, and I felt like we're ending the year with momentum. Again, it's not everything, but it is helpful, and I talked about it at the last meeting in terms of our CPTs for next year. What we'll do is we'll plan the CPTs, so we'll have once a month there'll be one that the focus is on math data, the next month on ELA data, and then I think someone had mentioned the possibility of themes, right, and having teachers and teams work on themes and integrating, do some cross-curricular, identify those kind of opportunities. So those meetings will have more of a purpose, more of a focus, and we'll come out of them with something, marching orders to work on, and so that's something that I'm looking forward to in terms of ending the year with that kind of momentum. Are the scores disappointing? Yes. Will they get better? Yes. And I look forward to, I look at this as a great opportunity, Before I even interviewed, I saw it as an opportunity work on at the school. And I remember I was like, if I get that job, that's something I want to work on, and that's true. And I'm excited by that opportunity.
May I ask a quick question?
Oh, please do, yeah.
Through the chair.
Absolutely.
So they are somewhat shocking. There's a sticker shock here at these, especially the reading for grade 5. But I can't help but think that this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this a trend from COVID era, you think, from students being out of the classroom when they were learning their essential reading skills?
That's an excellent question, but I don't know if I would entirely attribute it to COVID.
Okay.
I just think, I'll be honest, I feel like it's like kind of, I don't want any excuses. No, sorry, but there are things that you can say about COVID, like, and there were, kids were impacted, right? Things are different, like you hear a lot of comments about behaviors and things like that, and it's hard to really say this is or this isn't. Could these be? Potentially, but that said, regardless, I feel like it's definitely something that we can, if we focus, if we dedicate our efforts and are strategic in our efforts, I think it's something we can definitely improve.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah,
think it
and-
has to improve.
Yeah, we will. So, but the COVID part, I don't. It's a good question.
I only ask because my limited math skills. It looks like it lines up, right? And then I'm looking at grade 2 and grade 3, and they're much stronger numbers versus grade 5 and grade 4. So are there any, without going through everything, are there specific interventions or supports in place to bolster these kids, these reading skills? I mean, it is such an essential.
Right.
If I couldn't read I can't talk about the books, but my very adult reading list, I'd be like really sad. So I think it's an important aspect, obviously, for career growth and success later on in life, not just recreational reading. Could you give me an example of one of the supports that students in, say, 5th grade could find?
Well, with our model, right, and really something that is the most effective is the small group instruction, right? So to go back, and I don't know how familiar you are with the STAR, with the STAR reports, but it really gives you very specific information about the needs of the individual students. And one strategy, like what would that look like, right? What would that look like in a classroom? Could be if you were to, let's say, walk up at some given point of the day, Dr. Rosenthal, we're talking about some strategies too, and really just not just the kids that are on IEPs, let's say, but all the kids, right? So they might not. There are kids that are not on IEPs that did not demonstrate like proficiency, right? So working with those kids and having there be in that co-teaching model where I'll give you one. It's called Walk to Learn is one example where you might have one teacher working on one skill in an adjacent classroom, let's say, and kids might go in there from different classrooms that there's an identified need based on their performance on the STAR results, and they'll go right in there and they'll work with that teacher on whatever that skill is. So it's really kind of, the whole MTSS model is basically utilizing your resources, right? And so taking those resources and having one person, because how do you service kids from multiple classrooms? Well, if you have the person in another room and they're focusing on it at a given time, and another bit is the schedule. So we're working on our schedule and just about to roll it out, and we have these intervention blocks where there'll be no new content taught, but at that time, kids who with specific needs that have been identified will walk to learn. They'll go to wherever that skill's being taught, maybe the classroom next door or maybe across the hallway, and they'll work on that skill with kids from other classes that have that same need based on the results of the STAR, and you can work with them on that. So it's a very, very efficient model, and it's something that we've worked very hard on developing the schedule. Like, schools rely so much on the schedule. If you nail the schedule, right, if you do it really well, it can be such a helpful tool. And so we put a lot of time and effort into that, and that kind of optimizes, gives you flexibility with how kids can have this small group instruction from different classrooms. It just makes it more efficient, and that's something we're working hard to create.
It sounds terrific. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Do we have the numbers from the beginning of the year? Like how far down is this? Because it looks significant.
We do have them, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. I know we got them put in front of us at some
I
point.
don't have them in front of me. I know that they just finished doing the 5th grade. I'm waiting for Bob to get his, and we'll share it with you at our summer retreat. But in looking at some of the scores in that, at the elementary school, there isn't too much of a change from beginning of the year to end of the year, meaning
Which is
Oh, it's just,
concerning.
it's
Which is
right,
concerning.
still
It-
concerning, but it
it's
didn't
flat.
necessarily drop significantly. It's just kind of steady.
in some grade levels, it stayed consistent. In some grade levels, it increased, meaning the percent, we might have had, I'm just making up a number, we might have had 20 kids in the red or yellow at the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year, we're at 25.
Okay.
So it's an area of concern that we talked about. Ken, do you want to talk a little bit about, I know Greg has rolled it out, he's not here. I could speak a little bit to it, hopefully you're more engrossed in it. At our delivery model for grades 4 and 5, going from grade-specific to subject-specific for special education, and how that's going to strengthen that connection in ELA and math.
Sure. So basically, what we're looking at is if you're focused on teaching one subject, right, you can go deeper, right? You can bring in new skills, and it's just easier to teach if you're focusing on one subject area. So what we're looking to do is have that basically departmentalized. So we'll have, but not really departmentalized, but really have one teacher focusing on the math instruction and another focusing on the ELA instruction. And then what you'll have is you'll have a special education teacher who's going to work at 2 grade levels, right? But they will also just work on either on the ELA or the math. So basically, the special educator who's focusing on the math will work with the 4th and 5th grade teachers who are teaching the math, right? So they'll be able to focus on those skills, and the same can be said for the ELA. So you'll have an ELA teacher and then a special ed teacher that will work with the 4th and the 5th grade. So instead of having to sort of divide their efforts, their energy, their focus to different subjects, they'll just focus on that.
Attend like the department, well, I guess in your grade level it'll be a little different, but like the department meetings for that and the common planning meetings.
Do you want to talk about the common planning stuff that you've done too for next year that you're building on?
Oh, no, it's fine. I'm blown away by this number. I can barely speak. So I'm mostly freaking out for your 6th grade team, honestly, because I know they're so fantastic and they've, had to do this a few times, but I'm worried for these kids moving, especially with this reading, right? Exactly what Julia said, which is the reading thing is so concerning to me because once you get to middle school and you're in the social studies and the science and you're on your own to study those things, if you can't read it and comprehend it, now it's not just ELA that's the issue. So I'm sorry, I'm freaking out about these numbers because it's really.
Just to give credit to Mr. Haynes and to Greg, they've come in and they've done a deep look at our elementary school. And one thing I'm appreciative of Ken is he's been able to make some tough decisions and say, you know what, we can't keep on doing the same thing and get the same results.
Right.
We have to try to do things differently. And Greg said, you can't do everything at once because it just creates chaos, and we can't have that happen. But we're doing pockets of things, implementing that win block to give kids built-in time into the school day to get extra help and supports. That's another Tier 2 intervention that wasn't in place, that is in place. We're going to continue with the intervention specialists that we had for it. The changing that special education model, we did a report earlier this school year, and I was looking at the data again today. There's a significant disparity between MCAS scores of students on the IEPs and typical peers, almost by 20 points. And it doesn't exist,
Higher.
and it doesn't exist in other areas. So changing that model to have a 4th and 5th grade special education teacher work consistently with ELA and another special education teacher to work with math in 4th and 5th, they can now see, okay, we really need to make sure this skill is completely developed in the 4th grade, because in the 5th grade, you may not think you're going to use it, but you're going to use it. But to have that experience of knowing what's happening in the 4th and what's happening in the 5th, as opposed to just working in an island. We're cautiously optimistic it can work. If it doesn't, we'll reassess and go back. But we can't keep doing the same thing we've been doing and getting the results we've been getting.
I also think too, not just, we heard it with, what you're saying with Mrs. Sosha, with Mr. O'Brien, I'm sure we'll hear it with Mr. Nget, and with Greg as well, is we had talked last year about looking at doing a curriculum audit, and we just didn't have the bandwidth, but we really need to look at what curriculum do we have? What capabilities does it have to be easier for our teachers? What training can we give with it? Because if we have this stuff and it's sitting in our building, we need to be either using it effectively, or if it's not the right thing, then it needs to go, and we need to get the right thing in front of our students.
And, I agree with you. Cindy's done a great job with Wonders and Go Math, and we've done some PD around it. We had PD last year for Wonders, and they came in, I think they did half day at the primary and half day at the elementary, and they showed everything that's available in Wonders, and teachers like, oh my God, I didn't know about that resource. Wonders, and I've done some diving into that, has a great map that says, here's Unit 1, here's what happens if you have a 5-day schedule, here's what happens if you have a 60-minute block, a 90-minute block, and a 120-minute block, and here's what you teach. And it differentiates it for struggling students, EL students, high achieve students, and I think there's one more out there. But everything's laid out there for teachers to do it. Last year, we had Cindy and Anthony do walkthroughs for about 2 weeks, just to kind of say, okay, let's just go in and check to see. We know the map of what's supposed to be done inside each day. Let's look to see what's happening inside classrooms. Teachers freaked out, like, what happens if it says I should spend 17 minutes on it and I only spend 15? But by and large, for the most part, and again, teachers have to have their autonomy to read the class and move on. But when Cindy and Anthony did that in grades K to 5, when it said on Tuesday you should be doing these 5 skills at the beginning, those 5 skills were being taught now. That was a snapshot in time last year, but at least it gave us some optimism that teachers are following the curriculum. And again, we have to be conscientious to go in and purposeful to target that.
No, and I don't want to be misconstrued that I don't think that the teachers
Yeah.
are following the curriculum, but they also need
They need PD.
I forget what I knew about programming that I learned about even 4 or 5 months ago, because I've gotten busy and I've had other things to do. I think really going through thoroughly and looking like, what is the pros and cons to this? What is the pros and us knowing, because I think, I don't know, I have an 8th grader. I don't know what the curriculum that they use in high school, and I just had a senior graduate. So, but that stuff isn't accessible. We don't know that. So I think we really need to just, and this has nothing to do with your school.
No,
improvement
no,
goals,
no.
And I'm really
ti-
sorry.
And time is our greatest enemy. I mean, we have 2 professional development days. We used to have 1, we now have 2. But if you look ahead at this year, we have to do 3-4 hours of training around the new SIS system in Power School. We have the new IEP that we need to roll out and do professional development. We have half a day of mandated training that's mandated that we have to do. We have to give teachers some time to get ready to greet kids. We do an opening address, principals do an opening address. That's the start, that's basically your 2 days. Then we have a day in October and a day in January. That's what we have for professional development. We've done a lot of work around school safety, around drilling for Alice, drilling for what happens if all these things happen. We have our mandated training. I wish we had more time to do the professional development in the school day. Half-days are somewhat effective, but you know what ends up happening? Kids get amped up on half-days because they know it's a half-day and it's a change of routine.
Right.
Teachers are doing the same amount of work in a 7-hour day in 3.5 hours. They go to lunch, they crash. So you get an hour of productive time, but it's so tough. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we did bring in the Reading Wonders rep several times, not just last year, and do a refresher. I've had some of my teachers that are really good at finding resources, and they share it with the rest of the staff at a staff meeting. Last year, we also brought in empowering writers and a rep from there and did a model lesson at both buildings, and the teachers commented that they liked having that refresher for just the same reason that you said. They forget. And so, we talked about that at Vertical Team too, and they gave me ideas on what they want to see for some PD.
And then and a lot of times we try to do that within the school day. So you're pulling teachers out of classrooms, which means you're pulling teachers out of classrooms, which means now you have to get subs and you have to get coverage. And again, we try to do that balance, what's our return on investment if we're going to pull teachers out for 2 hours?
Right.
Have a rep come in, as long as you're not doing it once every other week, but to do that strategically over the year is helpful.
It is. Well, and I think also too, like, as we look, at what we have for curriculum, even if we don't have the time to do these, like, refreshers and stuff as often as we want, if, Cindy, sorry, because you're just right in front of me, if Cindy knows Reading Wonders can do X, Y, Z, she can throw that stuff in regularly, but I think making sure that the curriculums that we're teaching are what our students need is really important right now.
Absolutely.
So, lastly, I just want to touch on are there any questions about and I also just want to mention, I was meeting, just today, Dr. Rosenthal and I, we were meeting, and we see the scores, right? I have to present them to Dr. Vieira. And anyway, so we're aware, and one thing that we were doing today, Dr. Rosenthal and I, we were meeting actually with one of the reading teachers at the school, and we were talking about how we could sort of better support this person and bring in other support personnel and sort of, because she works directly, that small group instruction is really the best way to help kids, and how can we support her better? So those conversations have started, and we see it. So I just wanted to mention that. And then if I could move to the front of the last page here, the school improvement, the social emotional learning. That was one thing that I think we all agreed upon was we as a team, as administrators, as staff, hopefully you agree as well as the school committee, that working on the social emotional element, the community, and the importance of the morning meeting, the Tiger Paws, our regular community meetings, reinforcing the core values of the school, because again, we're educating, like we want them to grow up and be really good at math, really good at reading, and good humans, right? And so that's why there's such a big emphasis on this as well. And this was something that we have I think we've done really, really well at our school. But there's other things that we need to work on, and I look forward to it. I look forward to creating a new school improvement plan for next year that has my name on the cover, and I'm excited by the opportunity. So, does anyone have any questions? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
For all your work.
Thank you.
Great job at Field Day, by the way.
Oh.
I got to go to Field Day, check it out. They did a wonderful
Thank you
job.
for being there. Yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
Last but not least, the knees aren't what they used to be, huh?
No, they're not. Boy. Okay. Think of a Vanessa Williams song from the early 90s. We're definitely saving the best for last.
So humble, Mr.
It's confidence.
It's, just, we're late in the game, and Cindy promised 3 minutes, and she went long, so we'll forgive her. So I'll start with handbook changes. So handbook changes for the high school, we have 3 that are under our consideration for tonight. And we start with our attendance policy adjustments for next year. The attendance policy adjustments are actually a culmination from the school improvement plan that was presented earlier this year, where school attendance was one of my focus points. So it kind of runs full circle for us tonight, which is nice. So historically, pre-COVID, Douglas High School especially ran around 16% on their population of chronic absenteeism for the state. The state defines chronic absenteeism as missing more than 10% of your school days. So once you hit 18 absences, you are considered chronically absent. Is what it is. That's just how the state defines it. Since COVID, so post-COVID, we run about 25%. Okay, where it's an increase of almost 10% of our population that is missing more and more days. So we'd like to combat that. I ran some data. Data doesn't, numbers don't lie. Mr. Manka, who is here, is track coach. He's got the stopwatch. Stopwatch never lies. The numbers never really lie. So I collected data from our PM attendance throughout the year, ran some numbers, come to find out there's a few things that were hindering us in different ways. One of the things that happened to be hindering us was actually what the attendance committee came up with is actually what our attendance policy was our 23-24 attendance policy was actually binding us in certain ways. Our 23-24 attendance policy was based off of term attendance and gave you 5 absences within the term. Well, 5 absences times 4 terms is 20 absences. You're chronically absent according to the state. So that was part of what was hindering us. One of the other things that was hindering us is that there was a lot of layers, almost too many layers to keep track of administratively when it came to attendance violations. So once you hit 7 absences in a term, how many days did you owe? How many hours of detention did you owe? It became very convoluted, it became very difficult to track administratively. So we said, okay, we've got some issues here, we need to streamline. So keeping in mind that chronic absenteeism is, 10%, we wanted to kind of target that number. So our proposal for the change is that throughout the course of an entire year, so a full year course, we would allow 17 absences for students, period. Any reason. They're sick, they've got a doctor's appointment, they have an orthodontist appointment, their family's going on vacation because it's cheaper in October than it is in December. We're looking at the whole year, culmination, 17 absences allowed. We don't really bat an eye. We want the parents to still call us so that we know the difference between a truant child and an absent child. A truant child faces different types of discipline because they are truant. They're skipping school, parents don't know, administration doesn't know, and we have an issue. So we want to be able to kind of open that up a little bit. And it also doesn't pigeonhole anybody for within a term missing 5 days. Let's say if they have strep throat or if they have a flu or something like that, they've missed their 5 days. It kind of convolutes, it messes the waters a little bit, and we don't want to do that. So for a full year class, we're looking at 17 absences. If it was a half year course, we're looking at 8 absences. Because once you've hit 9, 9 is your 10%, you're into that chronic absenteeism. The idea behind these numbers is that once a student goes beyond that, okay, for a student to graduate high school, they need to pass their classes and earn their credits. So we're going to use the ability to remove credits once the student goes beyond those allotted numbers. Of course, now what do we have in a situation where a student does violate this? And let's say we have a student at 20 absences for a full year course, and we take away their credits. What are we doing that's rehabilitative, that reinforces good habits? That's the next step of it. Historically, students absent too many times to get detention, they have to make up the hours, make up the hours, make up the hours, make up the hours. They're always getting a punitive discipline. The direction we've decided to go is non-punitive. We want to kind of build up good habits. So once a student hits 12 absences in a full year class, we will induct them into an attendance rehabilitation program. In doing so, if a student is present and on time for 5 consecutive days without any dismissals, they will earn one of those days back.
Can you repeat that?
Yes. So if a student is present every day for 5 consecutive days with no tardies, no dismissals, they will earn a day back.
Okay.
So, the idea of that is if they can do it for 5 consecutive days, maybe they can start building a habit of doing it maybe a 6th day or a 7th day in a row, and start building better attendance habits in that direction. So that is the direction we would like to go with our attendance policy. Now, of course, there are absences that, different types of absences would not count towards credit loss, and they would include college visits, up to 3 for juniors and seniors.
Each year?
Yes, yeah, so 3 their junior year, 3 their senior year. We would include, obviously, field trips, athletics, clubs. If they have a trip, they're going to a conference or something, those would not count against the students because they're doing something for the school, by the school. They're representing the school. So we would obviously not count those against them. If we went back to COVID days and we had school-imposed quarantines, you know, if the school's imposing it, then we can't count it. Religious holidays, we wouldn't want to count those against any student ever. They have to go to court. The court mandates they have to show up, whether it be for jury duty or other. Then, you know, as long as we have a note from the clerk magistrate, then that would be perfectly fine by us. Those are the types of absences we're looking at. The reason why we go down those roads, the state itself doesn't differentiate between an excused absence and an unexcused absence. They just look and see that the kid was absent. So that's why we have these caveats here to provide those educational opportunities or civic responsibilities, religious responsibilities, things of that nature. But the 17 kind of fulfills, if you have to go to the orthodontist, once a month to have your braces tightened, get the wire replaced, and you're kind of stuck at that noon time slot.
Because
We've
that's
all
what
been there.
happens.
Right. You're kind of stuck at that noon time spot. We have 17 absences to play with, right, throughout the course of the year. That basically equates to two plus absences every month. So kind of what you're equating that to throughout the school year.
Does this apply to our kids who are covered in their 504s for medical?
So kids that are covered under 504s and medical, medically excused absences are going to look a little bit different next year. So historically, Douglas High School has always said, if you bring in a doctor's note, we automatically excuse it.
Okay.
Okay? That's something that we want to change because we want to, again, decrease the amount of students that are chronically absent. And unfortunately, we do have some students that do attend the doctors more often than some other students. When they do that, the Department of Education has a physician's affidavit that the physician themselves can sign off on, saying that the student will be out of school for X amount of days with a start and end date of when this is typically going to occur. So if a student's going out for surgery and they're going to see this, those types of affidavits, that is what we would like to see kind of coming in if we receive something like that.
That's not
situation
going
like
to
that.
cover the intermittent.
No, that doesn't cover a lot.
What that does allow us to cover, though, is if we have to tutor a student that's been out that's going to be out for 14
You're
days.
concerned the student who's on a 504 for a medical issue, and as a result of the medical issue, they have to go to the doctors once a week for whatever.
Whatever the
Well,
case
what-
may be. And, I can tell you too, I've had nurses send my kid home for medically complex reason because it's over and above
What they can handle.
what they can handle.
Right.
So it's not his fault they got sent home
And they say, don't come back
and don't come back.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
So that would be an excuse.
school imposed.
So that's why I'm saying if the 504 covers their absences, I don't think that would be an issue in this policy.
I think there's a lot of
I do too.
room to, I appreciate what you're trying to do, and I appreciate, like, getting rid of, like, the administrative 50 and wanting to tell our kids what we want them to do rather than what we don't want them to do. But I have concerns about exactly with what you're saying. There's so much room for this to be.
I think the intent, correct, and again, going back to my days as a high school principal, there's a lot of, my kid has the sniffles, we see doctor's notes all the time for a variety of things. I think that's what you're trying to get away from, the student who's home for 3 days and the doctor writes a note, bellyache, stomachache. I think what you're referring to is a student who's on a 504 and IEP for a medical condition that's documented, and that says, as a result of the medical condition, they have to go to the hospital, to Children's, whatever it may be, for,
They don't all say it
Or
like
cannot
that.
be in school because there's no one medically trained.
There's no nurse at the school.
Or there is a nurse who says, I don't have the license to cover this, so the child can't be in school until XYZ is resolved.
so let's hold off on doing this. We'll talk to.
Yeah, I think this needs to
Dig
be
it. Okay.
on this specific,
Can I just ask a few questions? though, on this?
Absolutely.
The physician affidavit that
Yes.
you referenced, is that the only way that the state excuses medical absences?
It's basically the only way the state would excuse something like that, yes.
Okay, and do you know if physician affidavits could be used, say, in lieu of the typical doctor's note? Or is it only for long-term
It's
absences?
specifically for long-term, it's 14 days.
Okay.
Is their cutoff time.
yeah, that's not
That's
going
right,
to cover.
it's not
that's-
gonna cover you.
Yeah, it's not going to cover a lot of kids with medical issues. You know, and that brings up another concern I had as you were talking through this. I guess it would potentially be covered under a 504, but any kids covered under a 504 for any mental illnesses also makes me very nervous with this policy.
I guess, so, to play devil's advocate just slightly, is that I think it's beyond our control. If the state mandates that you go for so long and they will only excuse it for medical with a physician's affidavit,
Yeah.
then the issue is higher than this handbook. You know,
Yeah.
so no matter what, it's not like they're saying, oh no, like we're not going to allow the child to try to buy back or participate in a program, or maybe there'll be carve-outs in the program to say, if you are a part, you know, do have a 504, you do have certain issues that you can't get resolved in the school, that maybe this isn't for you. But as far as what is excused and not excused, I don't think that's our issue. It's the state's, and the only way that they're going to excuse any medical absence is if there's a physician's affidavit.
I think the mental illness piece for me is very concerning about some of the credit courses, especially with kids who face really severe anxiety issues.
And
This is going to severely contribute to
No,
that.
And I
And-
think for, you know, because I think we're gonna look into more of this too, but I think Paul looking into, and not, to your point, right? There's stuff that as a district we have to follow, but there's also stuff that DESI has to make sure is lined up to IDEA and all kinds of other guidelines. Maybe doing some more look into, you know, with you and Paul, into kind of how that looks for all kids.
I remember, I go back to my days as principal, and at the end of the year, you'd have kids with 25 absences and lose credit. And then 2 days later, they'd come in with a stack of doctor's notes with random dates from September all the way through June that said student was unable to come to school on these dates. So I think the state's trying to get away from that piece. I think to your fact, we do need to explore the 504 piece of it. The mental health and the anxiety, we'll have to look a little different at, but I think the 504 piece, and I'm thinking of a few cases that I know about where we have kiddos who once a week have to go to the doctors for, whether it's get the catheters replaced or whatever it is. We might want to check with legal on that and do some wording. I appreciate the intent because we do want to get around, we do get a lot of doctor's notes.
Right, I know exactly what you're saying. I just think this doesn't, especially taking credits away from a kid who has a medical condition, there's no way legally we can do
No,
that.
But I think with that form, though, that there's a couple of, I've seen a few that sometimes they'll allow you to manipulate it for an intermittent. So typical, like with an intermittent FMLA leave, like you might need to go
Yep.
do X, Y, or Z. But I think with how this is worded, that's going to get lost. I think we need to really be clear about.
I think on the mental health piece too, one of the struggles for those suffering from mental health issues, their school anxiety, which has never fully recovered since they were allowed to be home through COVID.
Since they were told they had to be home.
Yes,
through COVID.
exactly.
Not,
Yeah.
You know.
When the powers that be dictated
Right.
what was going to happen, and they were, and they haven't fully recovered from that. And the state still wants them to go to school. Obviously, if a student is in the building, they're not absent. So if the student has to be down in the guidance office to help reintegrate throughout the day and reintegrate throughout, through a phasing in process, those don't obviously count against any of those students either. Of course, if any student is suffering from mental health illness, we do want them to be seeing going to counseling outside. Hopefully they're conversing with their counselors inside, so we can have a paired approach on services and things like that. But yes, we, in the grand scheme of things, we are trying to, as a group, we were trying to figure out a way to consolidate this, streamline it, and make it accessible for everyone. I do believe the affidavit signed off does have some intermittent
Well, yeah.
excuse out of there.
Take a look, yeah.
Over 14 days, and we'll take a look at that. But if we don't change the attendance policy to something similar to this, we will continue with chronic absenteeism at that
No,
school.
and we
I
all
totally
appreciate
agree.
that.
I just think our medically, I don't know what to label them, my kid being one of them, like, this needs to be, and honestly, like, I'm just thinking through literally our 504, which is a legal document. This is like way against our 504. So I don't know what that causes for the school system. You know what I
We'll
mean?
talk- we'll talk to-
But we want to make something that makes everybody understand the expectation, the support, and I hate the word consequence.
For sure.
But,
Which is why we don't have a consequence built in.
Right,
We have
right.
a
Reward.
yeah.
And part of the issue, obviously, if kids aren't in school, they can't learn.
Right.
And as kids get older, it becomes, when you drive yourself to school and you drive your siblings to school, there's a lot of Dunkin' Donuts trucks coming in. There's a lot of, again, I lived it for years. There's a lot of different paths kids can take, You trust your 17-year-olds, if you leave work early, to get up and go to school. You're not going to leave your 5-year-old alone to get up to go to school. So we do see a lot of it. I know that one of the things that Rob's looking at is, I think it's for intervention. Seniors have a privilege where I know it's caused some heartburn.
We're getting there.
Yeah, I know you're getting there, but there was a senior privilege that if you had a certain grade level for all your classes, you didn't have to come in for intervention, which was a great perk or benefit for seniors. However, a lot of seniors were driving their junior and sophomore siblings, their 8th grade and 10th grade neighbors, and their 11th grade girlfriends to school, which means it just wasn't one person who was absent, it was, in a minivan, 8 kids who were absent.
Yeah.
So they found that loophole, and they ran through it, and give kids credits for finding loopholes and running through it. Rob found it and is going to close it up, I think, somewhere down the line here. But we want to get kids in school, and you would hope that they would get here, but, you're coming in late, you're picking people up. Now the intervention bleeds into first block, bleeds into the first period of class. So we just want kids in school. So we absolutely get the premise of the doctor's note, but the 504, and I read this, my head didn't go, and even Courtney and I, we had a conversation today about something else where sometimes you don't see all sides of things, which is why you have to have these discussions and,
Different set of eyes.
and people, and have another set of
Yeah,
eyes
as
to do
we
it. So
said
we'll look
earlier.
at that legal piece, but that was a good point, Meg.
Want to go to school improvement plan?
Well, I have two more on my,
I was trying to get
on,
through.
I know, and I would love to, but I do want to kind of go through at least the tardiness policy and targeted language policy that we would like to include.
So we'll do it as, are you looking for us to think about doing it as amended, or do you want to completely hold until we review?
So we have one more meeting on the 26th. Let's do everything together.
So hold the
On
rest of this?
On the 26th,
Yeah.
so we can do everything together once, and then have them just do a school improvement plan.
Okay.
Okay.
Will do.
So it's just cleaner that way.
Thank you.
Yep. So on the school improvement plan, first section we talked about was academic excellence. That we wanted to increase student achievement by increasing student exposure to those standardized tests. You saw back in, I believe it was October-ish, our MCAS data, we've had some AP data flowing in, we've had a lot of SAT data. So all these things, they get standardized, they compare across the district, across the state, across the country. So we used all that data, we distributed all that data, we came to some conclusions. What was nice about this, through my UDL walkthroughs, through my formal and informal observations throughout, I saw the warm-ups and summarizers in classes being focused on these. I saw quizzes and tests having these embedded into them as they were quizzing and testing on these certain standards. You would see the MCAS version of that standard in that quiz or test, or you would see it, the AP standard, version of that standard in that quiz or test, so on and so forth. So it was good to see the teachers kind of say, yes, we need to do more of this, and beef that up. And they definitely beef that up across their curriculum. There's always room for more improvement in these areas, but it's a good practice to just kind of incorporate these things anyways into our regular everyday practice. And I would say that we'll have to say wait and see for the effect, especially with the MCAS data, because that will come out, that'll be embargoed and out to us probably late summer. And then we'll kind of go from there, and we'll be able to dissect that data. But we should see some improvements from what I'm told by the faculty that they were implementing it with fidelity. So I was happy to see that piece. Consistently, we worked through the universal design of learning. We developed and implemented a comprehensive professional development program for the teachers centered around this. And, working through this through professional development, through other avenues, some faculty meetings and such, we started going through it. We noticed that there were some misconceptions on the district curriculum accommodation plans and building curriculum accommodation plans and where they fit into this whole scheme. So there were times when we would take a few steps forward and we realized it was too far forward, so we'd have to come back and revisit certain areas. I would like to thank both Peter Manka and Adam Nash for their assistance during that process, because they did a really good job of helping to bring that back down and outline that in a way that was very receptive by the rest of the faculty at that time. We still have some work to do in this area, as you've kind of seen consistently through tonight's presentations, and but we're getting there. One of our best, from what the staff had told me, one of the best things we did was during one of our professional development segments, I treated them as students. And in this very room, did a couple of exercises. One of the exercises was I put up a bunch of black and white pictures of some of the staff, and they were baby pictures, and I said, identify these people. And then I informed them that if they needed a barrier removed from this exercise, then please let me know and I'll remove at least one barrier. And so very quickly, one group was, yes, we need a barrier removed. So I handed them a list of who's actually in these pictures, which staff names are actually in these pictures. And then others picked up on it and said, oh, we want that too. And then they get the names and they made it a little bit easier, a bit more accessible, right? And then there were a couple more barriers to remove, such as, maybe putting the images in color. So they got to experience it from a different lens, which was nice. I got a lot of positive feedback on that. And another one, using a tic-tac-toe diagram of how to write a song. And if you've ever written a song, you might be able to hit all 9 parts of that tic-tac-toe diagram. But if you've never written a song, maybe you're only going to hit 3. And how would you grade something like that? Proficient, like what level of proficiency would you have? If you hit all 9, you've mastered it. If you got 3 in a row, that shows proficiency. If you got tic-tac-toe, it shows proficiency, and different varying levels of mastery beyond that. So they enjoyed that exercise as well, and it kind of gave them insight as to, it's not always got to be this one way, which was nice. And last, again, improved attendance. Again, we went through the process. We had a attendance committee. We had a ton of meetings. We looked at other schools and what they have for plans. We looked at schools that have decreased their chronic absenteeism. They're like the model schools. You really don't want to look at the other schools. You really want to look at your model schools. So the model schools. So the attendance policy that I did present tonight did follow a lot of what the model schools were going with. And a lot of it uses their language because in education, we beg, borrow, and steal, and we ask for forgiveness on that stuff. And we do look for our model behaviors, and we do want to be able to reinforce some of that with our own. So we were able to go through that process with Fidelity. It was sent out to some parents on the school council, and they looked at it and they gave their input in different places and what they wanted to do, especially regarding tardiness. They provided different numbers, different ways to kind of work around that. One of the things that came out of one of our many meetings was, once this is all settled, I'm going to provide a community Zoom for anyone that wants to attend. I'll record it in case anybody doesn't attend, and kind of describe the many different scenarios that are there, including those with 504 plans and IEPs, and those that have to go through the physician's affidavit part of it. So that way, everything will be clear and out there for the public. So.
Forgive me if I didn't say what I need to say on this. It says provide CRA resources where necessary.
Yes.
CRAs are not a resource. CRAs are a court involvement. If you want the child to access mental health supports, or you want the child to come back and combat some school anxiety using things such as Care Solace that the district pays for, the behavioral health helpline, getting kids involved, having to go to a court, having kids now not trust the school, that's not a resource.
I use the word resource because of the students that would be over the age of 16, because a school only can use CRAs for students under 16.
Yeah. No, all
So
day long I do
sometimes,
it.
so sometimes parents aren't aware of those things and those options if they have a habitual offender or they're having difficulties with their children at home. I found that, providing them every avenue we can is the best option, so.
I appreciate that, but also giving them informed consent when we file a CRA on a family or we encourage them to do that, that then invites DCF into their life saying that they cannot effectively manage their child. And that puts the other children, if there's multiple siblings in the home, at risk of being removed because this family is now being labeled as negligent. So I appreciate wanting to give resources, but I think we all need to be informed on what the cost could be for our families. I know.
Of course.
We want to get providers, we want to get families help, and we don't want families to wait on these wait lists, but doing this stuff causes trauma. And that's just my soapbox. And what people have voted on and what people brought to the table is fine, but as long as we all know that there's a cost to
Yep.
those families.
And there is, 100%. For students that we've had to file CRAs on, there's been essentially the two that we fall under is the habitual school avoidance and habitual school offenders. So under those two, that's basically where the school kind of plays around in that aspect. And obviously, like I've said to you before, if we do go under there's so many more steps that we have taken before we reach that.
And I appreciate that. When I look at it and I see the word resource,
Yes.
the School Avoidance Alliance is a free resource that any of us can access. It has so many things that administrators can do, families can do, students can do, and that is just take a look at it.
Yep. Will do.
Any feedback on the mentoring? Did the mentoring help at all?
So our peer mentoring, it helped in some cases, didn't help in other cases. Mixed reviews. It's a great program because without it, it's so much worse.
Yeah.
That's clear as day. Without that extra person, sometimes we get caught up in thinking two students would be a good match, and they're not.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes what we get caught up in, so that takes a little extra balance there. So the peer mentoring program is a good way to go
Is
about
that students within the same grade level, or have you typically, like maybe an upperclassman with someone in a, okay.
it. Yes, it's typically an upperclassman working with an underclassman,
Yeah,
yes. And again, it's about the match.
I know, it's a tough,
It's about the match.
Yeah.
If the match is good,
yeah, I bet.
then it works really well.
Yeah, I believe it.
Thank you for all your work.
Yeah, thank you for this.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
I will end this 3-hour segment of my
I was like,
report
geez.
with this. We have a lot to celebrate. Okay, we'll go back to last week in our senior awards night and our graduation. We saw what our graduates are doing, we saw the work of our graduates, and we see that as a result of what's happening pre-K all the way through 12. And as I said earlier, it's our teachers, it's our administrators, it's our bus drivers. Kids don't get to the point that we saw last Tuesday and last Friday night if it wasn't as a result of a village. However, as is the case in any organization, we have work to do. And we know we have work to do. I'm pleased that, like I said this before to you, that we have a committee that allows us to do aggressive school improvement plans, aggressive goals, because what I don't want is just to do easy goals that we're all going to hit and check a box, because we don't improve that way. I'd rather set the bar high and come close to achieving it and move forward than set the bar low and never be able to move. So we're going to continue setting that bar high. Do we have work to do? Absolutely, 1,000%. But we also have a lot to celebrate, and, these next 2 weeks are a lot about celebration. You have invitations to what, pre-K and one, no, pre-K and one promotions ceremony. Again, there's a little competition with invitations, but we'll leave it at that. We're going to see a 5th grade promotion ceremony. We have an 8th grade. We saw what happened at the high school, and they'll speak to a lot of the accomplishments of the students, and that's a result of what's happening inside the classrooms and inside our schools and with families. So yes, we have a lot to celebrate, but we have work to do too, because we want to keep on getting better. And now I will get off my soapbox.
No,
So we can continue on to the next one. But we have work to do. We have a lot to celebrate.
But we do, and seeing those kids graduate was amazing last week.
All right. So thank you.
So moving on to our school committee and subcommittee report accounts payable.
Okay, it's my time to shine. Accounts payable warrant approved. So I reviewed sometime in the past, I can't tell you when it was, last week or the week before, warrant 45 SCH 24 and warrant 45 SCH L 24. The warrants were dated May 16th and May 17th of 2024. There was a total of 18 batches for grand total of $261,851.08. There are no concerns and no irregularities. You're welcome.
All right, moving on to our consent agenda. We have in front of us the May 15th, 2024 school committee meeting notes. You guys want to take a look at those? And if nobody has any questions, I would be looking for a motion to approve.
I move to approve the school committee meeting minutes from May 15th, 2024.
And I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained? And moving on, we have the 2024-2025 school committee meeting schedule.
And that reflects the June 24th retreat, which we'll do a retreat and also some regular agenda. The 14th,
July.
sorry, what month did I say? January?
June, is it June?
Sorry. And we typically do a Zoom meeting in mid-August. We have one scheduled for, because of the quick turnaround from the end of the school year to the beginning, that January 8th one will be a Zoom. You see the rest of the schedule. I just do want to point out two things. A lot of times for that last one in December, right before the holiday, we've done that via Zoom, depending on what we have our agenda. So right now, we have it scheduled for in-person. I don't know what's going to happen between now and then. We'll do that. And if you notice, in February, March, and April, we only have one scheduled. There's a chance, depending on where we are with our budget cycle, that we might have to schedule another one. Because the second meeting in February and April coincide with vacation weeks, they're not scheduled. And in March, I'm away for that first one. We might have to schedule another one, but we'll wait till closer to January, February to have that happen.
How does it look to everybody? Any?
Looks good.
Awesome. So I would be looking for a motion to approve.
I move to approve school committee meetings for 24-25 school year.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained? All right, moving on to the job description for the special education department.
Sure, so Greg was going to do that, but he had to leave. I will take that on. We, through a grant, were able to fund a special education department clerk. I think the school committee approved that about 6 to 8 weeks ago. We haven't had any takers yet. There are 2 people that have applied for the job that Greg and the coordinators, and I believe Lois, are getting ready to interview over the next week or 2. We wanted to bring to you a copy of the job description. Just in summary, this person's primary responsibilities are going to be working with the coordinators, all the paperwork associated with an IEP meeting, the invitations, the files, the folders, the sending out invitations, the collecting the forms, the mailing the forms out. That will take a little bit of workload off of the coordinators to allow them to get inside classrooms. This is just a copy of the job description.
Anybody have any questions on this? So it looks like Greg's administrative assistant will handle more of like the business office stuff, kind of more of, or
Greg's administrative assistant will be Greg's administrative assistant.
instead of having to be Greg's administrative assistant and do all this stuff.
Correct. She might still do some of the stuff as they work on workflow, because Greg still has to sign off, and we need to figure out, after Greg signs off, does it go to the clerk or does it go
Right.
to Lois? But this will take a lot of the responsibility off of the coordinators and potentially some off of Lois.
Well, if nobody has any questions, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the job description.
Do we have to approve this if we already approved it?
No,
we
we're
only-
not sure why it's.
I don't, I think we were going to bring
Yeah,
it
I
to
think
you
that's why.
on that date.
Oh,
and
it
we
was,
didn't.
yeah.
I'm like,
So
wait,
we
this
need to
says
fix
we
that.
approved it.
I think there was,
Yeah.
I think because we had a question about the amount of hours. There was some
Yeah.
Okay.
very.
We had to pull it back,
Yes.
yeah.
Mhm, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve the Douglas Public School job description for Special Education Department Clerk.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained? All right, moving on to the custodians memorandum of agreement.
So in your packet, you do have the copy of the memorandum of agreement for, between the Douglas School Committee and the Teamsters Union Local 170 for the school custodians, but I have summarized it. For FY '25, $1.50 was added to the FY '24 rate, plus a 3% COLA. FY '26 is a 3% COLA, and FY '27 is a 3% COLA. For the nighttime shift, it went from 50 cents additional per hour to 75 cents additional per hour for those who are regularly scheduled. Shift includes hours after 2 p.m. And also, we added an additional $100 to each of the longevity categories. We added Juneteenth as a holiday. And we did update the bereavement language to include like consecutive or non-consecutive days, because you know, everything's so different these days. And to include memorial services and celebrations of life. Because things are just so very different than the way they used to be, so we did make that change. So does anyone have any questions?
And again, I'll do this for both groups that we did this. The Teamsters who represented, Ken Bergen, who represented the custodians, and John Allen, we had 5 meetings. One was ground rules, one was just finalizing some minor details. It was a great collaborative process. We worked well together.
Yeah,
We
very
even
good.
laughed in negotiations. Those of us who've done negotiations, laughter doesn't happen too often in them. So
So it was
it
a
was
great
fair.
process.
They came in
Yeah.
with reasonable requests, we came in with reasonable requests. It was a great process, and just want to not only thank the custodians for everything they do, because they've been really short-staffed.
goodness, and
some of them
really
been
working hard, yeah.
you know, double and triple overtime hours to make it happen. But just, you know, I think this represents an acknowledgement of their hard work. And again, as I'll say a couple times tonight, one of our goals is to get as many of our employees to the middle in the valley. A lot of our salaries, and I noticed when I came in, if we weren't last, we were second to last. And we do not have the infrastructure in the town to support being the highest paid in the valley. We just don't have that level of a tax base. But we want to get people to the middle, or as close to the middle as possible. And this does that for our custodians, and like I said, it was a great process.
It really was.
4 or 5 meetings, an hour and a half each
Yeah.
meeting. It was really good. So I'm thankful that we were able to come to agreement with this, and I know they're pleased with it too. They ratified it, so I'm very happy with it.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. I just have one question. Do we have to sign this tonight?
Yeah, I have them right here.
Okay. But
Yeah.
do you have a
Do you have-
different
yeah, this has Monique
reorganized?
on it.
Yeah.
No, yeah, we can just cross off, yeah, because those were done, of course, before. Yeah,
Right.
it doesn't matter, we just
Yeah.
already crossed off,
So
yeah, we'll take
cross
care
off
of
and
that.
We'll fix it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a problem at all. Yep.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow.
He hit print before the.
Oh, yeah, this is
No,
done
and
before, yeah.
No, that's fine. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure.
Yep.
So I would be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the memorandum of agreement between the Douglas School Committee and the Douglas Public Schools custodians.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained?
Okay, the next one is the memorandum of agreement between the Douglas School Committee and Teamsters Union Local 170 again for the cafeteria workers. And the changes for the cafeteria workers contract was in FY 2025, it's a 5% COLA. We added a new step 15 called Super Step at 3%. FY '26 is a 4% COLA, and FY '27 is a 4.5% COLA. Their out-of-grade differential increased from $1 per hour to $50 per hour. That's when when the general helpers work, if the kitchen manager is out, and they're assuming those duties for the day. Longevity, we add an additional $100 to the 10, 15, and 20-year categories, and added $150 to the 25 and 30-plus year categories. We increased the shoe allowance from $100 to $150 for 2 pairs of shoes, and we also updated the same exact language for the bereavement, consecutive, non-consecutive days, and memorial services and celebrations of life to be included as well. And we did also add required training language as well. Which again, I want to reiterate what Dr. Vera said, and even with the, we had some more requirements that we added for the cafeteria workers, requiring mandated trainings and things like that. They were very pleased with that, happy to do it, very supportive. I mean, just a really great process with both. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm just appreciative of everybody's work to get these contracts together.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion to accept the memorandum of agreement between the Douglas School Committee and the Douglas Public Schools cafeteria workers.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained? All right. So now we are going to move on to the superintendent's contract discussion, which you should have all gotten in your emails, that we have been talking about at length. And I think that it's been a very collaborative process between us and the superintendent, and everything, just in interest of the time, we could go through all the contract highlights, but it's going to be on our website. Everybody's going to be
So
able to.
I was going to add that.
Thank you, 'cause-
All of our contracts get sent over to the town and posted on the town's website. So my contract, principal's contract, teacher's contract, custodial contract, and that's the same for the municipals as well, too. So anyone who wants to take a look and read any of our contracts, the 8 pages of them, or for custodians, the 20 pages, or for teachers, the 45 pages, they're available on the town website for people. There's a little bit of a lag time from when they're signed to when they're able to be uploaded, but everything's available on the website for people to look at.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, but kind of the, I guess, Reader's Digest version of it is that we have offered Paul a salary, because it's not in front of me, it's electronic right now, but the salary for Paul to have an average salary within the valley. I know you came in, you worked with us, and we just appreciate the work that you've done. We are looking to extend you for 5 years until 2030. Part of that contract does, for people that haven't seen it, don't know, there are incentive bonuses that if we meet certain goals that we set as a school committee based on public input, based on school administrators' input, based on families' input, that allows the superintendent to get additional merit raises, not merit raises.
Bonuses.
Bonuses. So, with that, I will be looking for a motion to approve the superintendent's contract.
I'll make that motion too, to accept Dr. Paul Vieira's contract with the Douglas School Committee for the next 5 years.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained?
Again, thank you to the committee. We started this conversation, like you said, months ago, and things take time. I'm grateful for the committee for trusting in me and believing in me. Like I think Greg said, and everyone said it, we have a good administrative team, and to have that stability and leadership across the district in all positions allows us to move the district forward. I'm blessed to have you. I've said this to you on camera and off camera and individual. We have a great committee. We have a great leadership team, and I'm thrilled to be here until, I can't believe I'm going to say 2030.
I know, when I heard that date.
Yeah.
I know, when I
It
read
sounds
the
like
damn-
100 years from
It
now.
sounds like so long now. Till 2030, so I'm very pleased for the opportunity and humbled for the committee's faith in me to be able to lead the district, our teachers, and more importantly, to get the kids what they need to be productive and awesome members of society once they graduate our school system. So thank you for that.
Thank you, and I think, I personally appreciate that even when we don't agree with things, right? Because you and I don't always agree on things. But that you're open to listening and you're open to hearing and you're open to looking at things from a different point of view. And that is the biggest thing that we need in a leader.
And I think we saw that tonight. Like, we're not all perfect. We make mistakes. We miss things. We see things. We have the conversation, and we go on. And that's an important part. But, yeah, we have to listen. Thank you.
And so now we're going to move on to the fiscal year 2025 non-union rates and salaries, administrator salaries.
So in front of you, you have a copy of all non-union personnel. That includes myself, Courtney, our principals, our director of special education, our administrative assistants, our secretaries, our tech department. And again, I came to you, I think this time last year, and I looked at our FY25 budget in our needs. And one of the things we were looking at was making sure that our non-union personnel, our cafeteria workers, our custodians, and our paraprofessionals, those are the bargaining units that we had for this year, we were able to do something to get them as close to the middle as possible. And again, this was a lot of work for Courtney and myself to look at different comps, to look at what different school districts are doing. There's a lot of people, no offense, Rob, a high school principal's a high school principal's, but sometimes you get into the nuances of primary. You have some primary schools that are pre-K, K1, 2, some are just pre-KK. They all look different. Some have 80 kids a grade level, some have 10 kids a grade level, some have 200 kids a grade level. So it gets tricky to look for comps. So what you have here, Heather says it all the time, you can't get from A to D without going to B and C first. This gets us to C+. And we're close to getting people close to that middle. So you have, again, in front of you, members of the leadership team. You have people in Courtney's office and my administrative assistant, their raises. We have something here for our administrative assistants, full year, school year, our network technicians. And on the last page, we have something for our substitute teachers, and what else do we have? Substitute teachers, nurses, and
A lot of
for,
substitutes and then tutors, yeah.
and tutors. So again, some increases, some staying the same, but every year the school committee votes on this, and just for the public to understand, this thing gets sent to the town, so when the town's looking at paying us, they can actually have some backup, so it's not just say, we're paying this person this dollar amount without a vote from the school committee that acknowledges this is what people are getting paid. So that's why you just approved the contract, that's there, and that's why you're approving our salaries, because we don't have it built into our salaries year over year. So I want to thank, Courtney for all of the work. It's, making sure we have the money for FY25, but more important is, can we sustain this in 26, 27, 28? And then doing the comp reform and looking at it and putting it away and looking at it and putting it away and being thoughtful and purposeful for it. So be happy to answer questions if people have them.
Can you just explain on the last page, I don't know what I'm reading here. Prior to this date, for FY 2019 and prior years, the rates were 85 for 1 to 30 days. I assume this is directly related to substitute teachers.
Where are you?
Sorry, right in the center of the page in this bolded spot, I believe this is for substitute teachers. On the last page, sorry.
Oh, okay, I'm on the wrong page. There we go,
Yeah,
okay.
see that bolded part in the middle, this,
Oh, yeah, that's
rates
just
for
a
85
chronology.
for 1 to 30 days.
Yeah,
So what was happening was, you
Yeah.
have your teacher who's out one day, you have a sub. Sometimes you have teachers who are out a week, sometimes you have teachers who are out 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So you try to hire a consistent sub in there. When a
Got it.
teacher's out for 3 weeks, the teacher will leave some work, but there's a greater responsibility on the substitute to be able to then do some additional things. So here, it used to be that you'd have to
we
wait
actually,
until.
yeah, we actually did this when Superintendent Maines was here, so that after, it does change like at day 6, if you look at the way it is now. So what you're seeing that we have there now, that we've had since, for quite a few years, You know, they changed it to recognize that, you know, after 5 days, you are now there, you know, continuing on, so from 6 to 30, and then we increase it at increments after that, because of the length of it.
Got it,
Where
okay.
prior years, it wasn't recognizing it, you were waiting a
I see,
whole
and I see the
31
difference.
days.
I see,
You know,
yeah.
right, of
The-
being
the
there
1 to
every single day.
5 is different, got it, got
Right.
it, got it.
So
Okay,
when
that
you-
makes
Once you
sense.
sub
It's not for
person on
day-to-day.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
But
okay.
day-to-day would still be, see how it says here, teacher day-to-day, if it's just you're working 1 day here, 1 day there, then that's still staying at that.
Okay.
That top, that same rate, and that won't change if you're changing around every day. But it's recognizing that you're in that classroom every day consistently, consecutive days, and taking
No, that
over the
makes sense.
classroom, and, yeah,
And I know we've talked about this,
but more
but
the long-term nature.
for people at home that maybe don't know or who end up seeing this at some point later, you've done like you've looked around the valley to make sure, we all know, right? We want to be higher than the middle of the valley.
Correct.
We want to do that, but we also are really excited that we're not making any cuts this year when
Correct.
everybody else is.
So we looked, so last year, the town, on the municipal side, did a comp reform for their employees. We looked at the values, again, we threw out, no offense to my colleagues in Grafton or Milford, but it's just a different, they have a different tax base than we do. It's tough to compare their salaries. I'd love to be able to have their tax base, we just don't. So we compared them to the other schools in the valley in order to be able to say, okay, where are we comparable to those other 8 school districts? So we did do that. And again, you know, we're in the middle of negotiations with the paras, and anyone who's watched, I make the statement publicly there, that we're looking to get paras to as close to the middle as we can, as possible.
Thank you.
That's what we do for everyone else.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So if we don't have any more questions, I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the fiscal year 2025 non-union rates and salaries and administrator salaries.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? And we'll now be moving on to the fiscal year 2026 French.
We still, oh, sorry, yep.
The French River Educational Collaborative oil bid.
And I did say FY '26, so it wasn't that long ago, I came with the FY '25.
That's where I stumbled on my words a little bit.
Right, so we, you
I
know,
was like,
we.
wait a
we-
minute, everything else is different.
So we have French River Educational Collaborative, otherwise known as FREC, only for our oil bid. We do not have it for anything else, including food service, food or anything. So we do have a consultant that we've been working with, and, you know, they were kind of looking at the pricing and all that. So anyway, we did go out to bid. Now, of course, if we didn't like the price, we could just throw the whole bid out. But the price came in for the ultra-low sulfur heating oil, otherwise known as ULSHO, at 2.6972 per gallon. And our FY '25 price is 2.6490 per gallon. So even projecting out to FY '26, that's only a .0482 cents more per gallon. So we did pretty much, I think it was unanimously, we unanimously accepted the bid. So and locked that in. So that was a really good price. So we just have to bring it to school committee, then I have to sign. They're waiting for me. They keep sending me an email over and over and over again every day. I said, I am bringing it, don't worry about it, I'll be signing off on it. But we just need to have the school committee accept the bid. I'm not really sure why we have to for this particular one, but we've been doing it for years, so.
Okay,
So it's for
so-
Dennis K. Burke, is the company that won the bid, at 2.6972 per gallon. Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Want me to make a motion?
Yeah, and I have the language right there in the
Oh, I'm
agenda
reading
item
it.
summary. Yeah.
I'd like to move to accept the Dennis K. Burke, Inc. bid of $2.6972. You have to read it.
2.6972 per gallon.
Thank
Yep.
you, per gallon for the purchase of ultra-low sulfur heating oil for fiscal year 2026 pursuant to the French River Education Center, Inc. invitation for bids.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained? All right.
Thank you very much.
Looks like we are at the end of the consent agenda, but I have,
So that right there is something that I need, sorry, I forgot, thank you for reminding me. Is that med delegation at the
Yes.
top? So every year, we have to recertify for med delegation. What it does is it allows for the nurse to be able to, for certain medications, to allow for her to, him or her to train a staff member to be able to administer medicine, Tums, cough drops, Ritalin, whatever, Tylenol, whatever it may be. So Mel Gosher at our high school goes through the certification process every year and requires the signature of the school committee chair. Heather's not here today. You are. I was going to wait until Heather came back, but that would be the 26th, and school would be out, and I know Mel wants to process that.
Okay.
So I just need you to sign it.
I can do that. All
Okay.
right. Perfect.
I can't believe I almost forgot that. Thank you for catching that.
Yes, so thank you for that, yeah.
And then Courtney has
Okay.
two things.
Yep, I do have, it's actually at the very end of your packet. I do just have a few transfers requested by administrators. The FY 2024 General Fund Budget Transfer is number 7. Sorry, I can't even speak. So it's just 4 of them requested from administrators.
Do you need a motion for those?
Do I read this part? I move to approve the FY 2024 General Fund Budget Transfers number 7 at our school committee today, June 5th, 2024.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained? All right, the 2023 single
Okay,
audit.
thank you so much. So I do have provided you with a copy of what is otherwise known as the single audit. So the school lunch program gets audited every year, along with a bunch of other, town grants and things of that nature. It's all part of the same single audit. There were no findings at all. I did happen to watch the town audit committee when they were talking about doing the single audit, when they were talking to the auditor about it, and they did do a lot of procurement testing as well in this audit, and they didn't find any issues with that or anything else when they were with what they were looking at with regard to the school lunch program. I'm providing the entire single audit to you. I'm only speaking to the school lunch. That's the only part that, that we're, actually, it may have been some IDEA as well. Let me see. It all depends on dollar thresholds. Yep, I mean, they have everything in here as far as, yep, we do have some grants in here as well. That they report on, absolutely no findings on anything in the entire single audit, though.
Nothing on everything, it's not just financial, they're looking at everything within the.
Well, no, it's not everything, there's certain guys, they have to look at certain things under the, single audit guidelines. It's very, very specific.
Okay.
And it's something that happens every year. But again, it will change as far as what things, clusters they'll have in here if they're auditing. It all depends on dollar thresholds, and things of that nature, so.
Do you need a motion for
No.
this? You just
No,
wanted
just
us
for
to have the
information.
information?
Yep.
Awesome.
Just for information.
Do we have any topics?
We do not.
All right. Well, at this point, we're going to move to executive session and not come out to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if in an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation positions of the body, and the chair so declares an open meeting complaint filed by James
Kolbiaka.
Thank you, and I'm sorry, James, if you're watching. So I would be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Roll call vote to enter into executive
Oh.
session.
Okay. I'm looking for a roll call vote to enter into executive session.
Meg Radz and I.
Julia Lagerholm, aye.
Beth Bergstrom, aye.